just a reminder to everybody, we're not going to take roll call, but we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 10:01. From a roll call perspective, Daryl's got the screen up. What you need to do is in the invite, there was a link that you can click on, and then you go to that sign in button and you just sign in and register your name and what authority board you are representing. That allows us to keep track of everybody that is attending the calls. So if you haven't done that, Daryl, just put the link in chat. Thank you, Daryl, and make sure you do that before the call is over today. All right, so project update. Cindy, we're going to start right off with you and go through a project update. And we've got a couple of documents we're going to use for that, and that is just the status of the install document, which is our weekly spreadsheet. And Daryl, I don't know if you've got that handy or not, the one she sent out yesterday.
I do. It'll just take 1 second.
Not a problem. And I guess I should confirm, Cindy, are you on the call this morning?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. And just while Daryl's pulling that up, do you also have Intrado that's joining us today to go through the reporting, Clearview?
No, we were going to schedule a separate meeting for the Clearview training. I have a request out for some dates from them, but I haven't gotten any back. So I called and left a message to see if we can't get those dates.
All right, thank you so much. So this document is the weekly document that CenturyLink produces, and it goes through the different status. We're not going to start with issues like we typically do every Monday, but we're going to go ahead and talk about the status of the installs before we get into open issues. So we're just going to discuss the pending PSAPs to start with. So Cindy, if you want to run through where we're at with the PSAPs we haven't migrated yet.
We've got circuit orders in for Pueblo and Pitkin, Archuleta, Cortez, Delta. So those circuit orders have all gone into the system. You should start to see those circuit orders getting completed at your site. We were a little behind on those. So I'm working to make sure we get caught up and just go ahead and get, for anybody on the call, our goal is to just get all of the remaining circuits ordered this month so that we have all the circuits in for the rest of the project.
Okay, so on the sheet, Cindy, just to clarify, you have Pueblo all the way down to Delta County ordered.
Yes, and I think I need to go and confirm, but I believe the orders for the rest have been keyed, but I just need to double check that they're in. And we're working with the contacts now at Shriver and Cheyenne Mountain. So we should get those moving as well too.
Okay, that's great. And just from lessons passed on orders, you're placing the orders for anybody to need access to the building. Is Nancy going to be coordinating that, or should the PSAP expect a phone call? Because I know at one point we received a phone call direct from Lumen needing access to the site. So who should be reaching out to the PSAPs when Lumen needs access to install the circuits?
So Nancy is coordinating it, and then the tech that comes to complete that install will call as well.
Okay. All right, so that's great about the circuits. We'll keep that going. Any other updates you want to provide on the PSAPs that are pending that we have left?
Baca County is ready to go. Equipment install for Baca is scheduled for the 15th. And we're coordinating with Westel and hoping for a January 13th date to test and migrate at Baca County. Archuleta, I believe, is going to need to move to a later date. They are actually moving facilities on January 11th and 12th. They were currently scheduled to migrate on the 14th, and that's a little too close to when they're moving to a new building.
And do you have the circuit order placed for their new facility then?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll just need to work on a new date with them. Federal Heights was installed yesterday. Everything is good there. And Grand and Route are being installed today. EX1 monitoring equipment and Make Busy switches were sent out to Pueblo, Baca, and Grand. If you haven't received an email from me yet, you will this morning, just giving you a heads up that that box has been shipped and you should expect it at your site. And once you have it, we'll schedule the Lumen Tech to come out and install that monitoring equipment and Make Busy.
Okay, great. Anything else with the schedule for the PSAPs that are getting ready to migrate?
No, I think that's it.
All right. So any of the PSAPs that are getting ready to migrate, do you have any questions about your status or anything that you would like to reach out and ask Cindy about? That's great. All right, so let's move on to the open issues for pending PSAPs that need attention. And everyone, we have a new tracking spreadsheet because why not, right? We need more spreadsheets to look at. So it's our second tab on that spreadsheet. Perfect. Thanks, Daryl. And these are the issues that we're tracking. So if you have migrated over and you have an issue that's open that you believe needs attention from Lumen, so outside of maybe a PBX configuration, or you haven't determined where the issue lies, it needs to be on the spreadsheet. So if we don't talk through your issue today, let's make sure that you bring it up on this call. So Cindy, I know there's quite a few here, and some of them I'm just not aware of. So I would like to go through them case by case.
Okay. And I don't know if you can scroll to the left a little. We're seeing column D on the screen right now.
Daryl, can you go ahead and scroll all the way to the left? There we go.
There.
Thank you.
So metrics training, of course, we need to get everyone that metrics training. I see Kim is on the phone. Kim, I sent you an email this morning and left you a call. If you and I could just coordinate a couple of options that we can provide to the group for that training, that'd be great. And then we have a few alley issues. So the Douglas, Castle Rock, Parker, and Fremont are still getting alley through the legacy network. We have not been able to move them over to the ESInet. We did attempt that migration on Tuesday. It did not go well. And then we weren't able to get them back on the legacy networks until about 1 o'clock yesterday afternoon, I believe. C1 had to replace some equipment that went bad.
So I guess can we start with why did it not go well? What was happening when you tried to migrate them over? Is that a LE provisioning team that needs to be engaged within Trello? Is it a configuration issue on C1 side? Who's working that issue to get that resolved?
So I think it was a configuration issue. We weren't able to get a heartbeat or a good connection to the call handling equipment at Douglas County. So we spent a couple of hours actually trying to get that connection established and could never even get the connection up. I believe, and I need C1 to provide more details, but I believe they're attempting to do an IP tunneling at the site. And I'm not sure what was wrong, but I think we need to work with C1 more and do some more testing on that solution they're proposing. We did have Ali sysadmins on for that testing, along with the PSAPs and the C1 team. And we were just never able to get a good connection established or heartbeat on that connection.
Okay, so I guess who's taking the lead? Are you taking the lead on trying to get that data from C1 to get it back
I'll
over
take
to
the lead on
Entrado?
coordinating more testing with C1, and I think there's some next steps from them to look at what was going on at the site. But
Okay.
I certainly will keep coordinating and trying to drive this forward.
Do we have anybody from C1 on the call today? Okay, and
This is Jeannie.
yeah, go
I
ahead.
do know that at Douglas today, actually right now, they're beginning to work on some type of Viper upgrade. That's the only word I have. So because of that, I'm hoping that we believe this has something to do with this.
Okay.
Okay. So Cindy, can you discuss a little bit about what happened and why they couldn't roll back successfully and why that was such an issue?
Again, I have limited visibility into it. It sounds like there was a piece of equipment at the PSAP site that went bad, and those links went out of service. We couldn't bring those links back up. C1 ended up replacing some equipment at the site yesterday, which brought the links back up.
So that equipment seems to have failed after the migration to the ESInet. So it was up and working prior, but then somehow just didn't come back live.
Yes.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about this Annie Alley issue for these PSAPs? Cindy, you mentioned that Fremont is impacted by this as well. Was Fremont down?
Fremont evidently was back up after, didn't appear to be impacted by the outage when we attempted to cut back to the legacy network.
Okay, but their alley couldn't migrate either because same thing, you couldn't see the heartbeat for Fremont.
Well, no, they're served through, all of these PSAPs are served through connections at Douglas County and the Converge One data center. So they're all four interconnected from an alley standpoint.
Okay. All right, anybody have any other questions on this issue? Okay, call routing. As you know, we've had a few more that have made their way up to Larimer County. So do you have an update on the Summit County 3-digit transfer issue?
Roy Mann is taking lead on this, and he's been working with the PSAP and the tech to troubleshoot this. I haven't seen any more updates, and I haven't seen the log. I don't think we've gotten the log readout from the testing with Motorola yet that we talked about it today.
On Monday. And I think we do have Jeff on the call. So just so everyone's aware, the issue here is 3-digit transfers to State Patrol, or I guess even the 10-digit transfers from a 911 over to State Patrol are being misrouted up to Larimer County Sheriff's Office. So looking at CPE configurations, so what we were waiting on, Jeff, was the Wireshark tracing. And do you have an update on that? I know you were going to try and pull it on Monday and expedite the request.
Yeah, we're still trying to get everybody connected. Hopefully have some word for you later today.
Okay. Yeah, I know from an ESInet perspective on the calls I've seen, what we see is some behavior where we'll get 1 digit of the star code, and then a few seconds later, 2 digits of the star code, which I think is causing the behavior you're seeing, Kimberly, because it's not coming through as a complete route, or sometimes it's coming through more like 4 digits. And so it's routing to the first 3, which end up being Larimer County, because your star code is very close to State Patrol Moffett.
Okay.
It's something like we get 558 instead of 585, or something along that line.
Okay, so definitely a critical issue. We've been pending this since August, so we really need to try and get this resolved. The other call routing issue with Summit County is with admin transfers when they need to take a 911 call and transfer it to a 10-digit, like Ski Patrol. Those transfers are failing. So I guess what I need clarification on is the Wireshark data that we're waiting on from Motorola. Does that also capture this issue, Cindy? Do you know?
That's my understanding, yes, is that it captures both of these transfer issues.
Okay.
And there was some concern on the admin transfers that maybe they're not going through the ESInet, that they were going back through admin lines VSAP, and that maybe a change needed to be made there. But the Wireshark should identify that.
Anybody on with Summit County that has any questions or comments about this issue outside of get it resolved now, please? All right. So Cindy, I know that you guys are working on this, obviously, especially with the ski resorts open. It's a critical issue that we try and get this resolved. So if there's anything that we can do to help, especially since the calls are landing up here, I know we get in and grab the call details and send that to you. So if there's anything else that we can do to help expedite the resolution, please let me know.
Well, yeah, and I don't think they're just ending up at you, because I know when we were testing with Moffett, we tried transfers on it in that testing, and a couple of times when they tried to transfer back to Moffett, we ended up, I think, in Parker one. They went to different places, not to Larimer County though.
Yeah, and just so everyone's aware of this, when we think about these 911 transfers, they're even being misrouted when it's a manual entry into the CP, which makes it even more confusing when you're thinking about CP involvement. Is it a contact configuration? Is it something going on with the line pull? But we're talking about something that stays within the ESInet. It's a 911 star transfer to star transfer. And even when they try and do it manual, it's still behaving funny. So definitely think from an ESInet perspective, whatever additional resources are needed.
Yeah,
let's
absolutely.
try and get them
And when we look at it from an ESInet perspective, the ESInet is routing it based on the star code it gets. The question is, why is it getting that star code?
Okay, well, August 12th. So let's try and get this resolved. It's been too long. The next issue is unable to migrate the alley at Chaffee County.
Yes. Chaffee County has issues with the Viper at that site. It's the V Viper. And most of these connections, including alley, go through position 2, which is the position that's been having problems. We attempted a replacement on that position about a month ago that had issues, and so we've got Entrada rebuilding that, and we're waiting on a date on when that replacement project can be completed. But we can't do any more, I think, with Alley until we get the Viper issues resolved.
Does Entrado have a date that they're going to be able to get that console rebuilt?
I have not gotten one yet.
No, hey, Kimberly, this is Wes. I've got another call with Entrado during the noon hour to try to get them to drill down on that rebuild for that Chaffee position. And Cindy and I have both been hammering them on it, so that's what I'm working on.
Okay. Yeah, that's really concerning because, again, this has been an issue since August. And I know we were waiting for a while for Allie and then Allie sysadmin, and now we've got the console issue. So we'd like to get this wrapped up.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right, any comments or questions from Chaffey County? Okay, Bent County.
So Bent County, I just put on here because we've been pending this migration for a while. We can't pin down the new ESInet circuits because there's no room on the backer board. We need a new backer board installed at this site.
Okay, and I know that that email went out. Have we heard back from Bent County yet?
I have not. I haven't seen any response yet. I'll check with Nancy to see if they've gotten in contact with her.
Okay, do we have anybody on from Bent County?
That would be Sheriff Six. Both Nancy and I have communicated with him. Nancy's kind of waiting for him to come back. He has agreed to put that backer board up, and I've got to call him to him as well to get a hard date on when that can happen. So I'll drive out there if I need to next week.
Are you going to take a board and some hammer and nails with you?
I have offered that twice in our internal meeting.
All right, so MLTS.
So this is the PBX issues. I just wanted to add it to the tracker. And Kimberly, I used the date of the Rocky Mountain Park issues as the date for opening this issue with the PBXs that have not been configured with a PS Alley service.
And so, I'm sorry, Cindy, since I know we talked about it last month when we had our call, and I think we also talked about it in October, but I don't believe I was on that call because of the fires, but I know we talked about it in November. But can you just give some foundational information for everybody on this call, because we may have some folks that joined us this month that didn't make it last month?
Okay. So essentially with these multi-line telephone systems or PBXs, if they're not signed up for PS Alley service, there is only one main number associated to that telephone system or PBX that is databased for 911 routing and Annie Alley information. If they're not sending that number with their 911 calls, in the legacy network, they probably routed to a close PSAP because when they hit that legacy selective router, they can default based on that trunk they're coming into the selective router on to the county based on that trunk group or selective router they're routing through. They would have gotten no record found, but they would have routed, say, to Larimer County or to Estes Park. In the current setup, all calls in the ESInet that aren't database for 911 will default to Aurora, which in many cases, like for Western Colorado Regional, is fairly far away, or Grand Junction, of course, from where those telephone systems are.
Okay, so before we get into some of the changes to remedy this issue, I think some of the concerns, and I'm just going to kind of break this down into two pieces. So what what Lumen believes is in the current environment, so analog, old 911 network, the default routing, if you have some extension within a PBX or if you have a PBX system somewhere located in your county that doesn't have PSLE, when an extension would dial 911, it may default route to the default routing that's configured on that analog 911 trunk, and it's going to show on your Annie screen as no record found. We had some situations where we believe that those calls that default routed in the ESInet actually routed correctly in the analog environment, and that was from testing that Grand Junction did, and I sent over some screenshots. You looked at those and said, but those were different extensions that default routed during the attempted migration.
Yes.
So is
Yeah,
it,
we were testing from different numbers during the migration that default routed. So the one that got Annie Alley during the testing should still route and get Annie Alley today.
and it should route and get Annie Alley in the ESInet as well.
Yes.
Hey, Kimberly, this is Jeremy from Grand Junction. I don't know if I can speak up on this. Can
Yes,
you hear
of
me?
course.
So I guess I would question that because we did the same operation during the actual ESInet roll. And so we used Jennifer's extension here in Grand Junction when we did the initial test. And we tested when we rolled back on that extension, and it does route. We are getting actually under the traditional legacy environment from our PBX communities. We get very few that actually don't pop with a Ali Annie in this environment. So we can test again during an ESInet conversion with these same things, but I don't think the results are going to change based on the technologies in these PBXs. Now we did test with a different extension, which I guess speaks to the PBX multi-line environment. These guys are not dedicating a single line to dial out to 911 on. They have a multi-line environment, so it's going to grab based off of that operational workload of that PBX at the time. So we tested our St. Mary's, our main hospital here. They're not dedicating a single line out, nor are we dedicating a single line out. But in both instances on the legacy environment, those will route to us and we see those calls. Under the ESInet, I don't suspect we're going to see those calls. So we are willing to do more testing with you to kind of work through that as well. But I definitely don't want to limit this to say, well, those particular extensions, because I don't think that that is the case or summarizes the issues we're seeing.
Right, and there's definitely some that are not provisioned and default routed. But there was one that you got in your testing that got Annie Alley, and based on my research, you should still get Annie Alley on that one particular number today because it is database. But yeah, most of the St. Mary's ones were default routing. You get Annie Alley on those St. Mary's calls today?
Yes, we apologize if you can hear me. Yes, we get, like I said, there are very few that we reach in our center that we don't get an Ali Annie on from our larger PBXs. And it's just over the years, having worked with those vendors and that, and based on that technology. Now, very few have the PSLE functionality within their system or turned on by default. So we don't necessarily always get it's the second floor nurses station kind of thing from St. Mary's, but we get the default of the DID circuit that they're calling in on. It's passing that DID number, therefore that registration when it was set up on that PRI circuit. And so we get that call in that detail. And like I said, there's very few in our PBX communities that we don't get that detail on. So on that result, I mean, we are seeing these and they are routing to us. But as soon as we tested that, when we rolled to ESInet, that's where that disconnect came. And that's where that pop-up is.
And so, Cindy, that's my concern is I understand if it doesn't work in today's environment, the migration to the ESInet isn't going to fix that issue and it's not going to work in the ESInet. It's still going to default route. And so the solution that Lumen has proposed is to try and default route a little bit more by region. And I wish we could do like a Northern Colorado region, but we don't have a selective router up here. So, but at least a default selective router, a default routing on the western slope, a default routing in the Colorado Springs area, and then default routing for the Denver Metro, Northern Colorado area as a solution, or at least a little bit of a solution instead of having 100% default route to Aurora. So again, if it defaults routes today, no record found in today's environment, it would default route based on that analog 911 trunk and make it to your PSAP and show no record found. In ESInet, the best that we can do is get it to the selective router for that area and then default route to a PSAP that's centrally located for that area. I think that's an okay solution for these that are default routed today.
Mm-hmm.
But my concern is for the ones that are working in today's analog environment, to the hospital in Grand Junction, school, their city facility, they should still work in the new environment because it's not broken. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. And I don't know if we need to do more testing so you have more information you can take back to the complex translations team that you can take over to Intrado. But I don't understand why the numbers to the system that Jeremy's describing. I mean, it's kind of doing a round robin, right? Of, okay, I'm
Right.
going to grab this extension, it's available, so I'm going to dial out using this number. Why that
Well,
won't work?
yeah. Well, so I think, we did do testing with Matt at Grand Junction and my complex translations on Monday to gather some logs, and she's going through those to hopefully get us a little bit more info. But if you're getting DIDs, it was essentially default routing in the selective router, and providing that DID to you. The ESInet doesn't have that option. The ESInet gets 911 and the TN that dialed 911, and it looks up that TN, finds a no record found, and default routes it. It's not getting those DIDs. And I don't know that there is a way. I need more, and that's where I'm at with the investigation to find out if there's anything we can do with those DIDs that the selective router may have been able to determine previously when it didn't find a record.
Well, I guess that's my question on this, and kind of some of the concern on it. I mean, the fix for it is to turn on PS Alley, and we definitely need to work with our communities in being able to do that. But I think of that old dentist office with the mom and pop PBX that doesn't have that functionality. And so, now we've got to educate our populace that there's no way for them to turn that on. And so now we're relying on them to upgrade their phone system or do these manual entries to make sure that they can get routed in a network that is working for them today. So that's is kind of I can't say what the scale of the problem is, or I'm not sure any of us know what the scale of the problem is, but I think it's hard pressed to tell our communities that what's something they can do on the legacy network they are not able to do today, and that's what we need to work through.
And yeah, and I'm really concerned, Cindy, as well, just because we won't know until they try and dial 911 unless we go out and do some target testing. And maybe in a small community that's going to be a little bit easier, but Larimer County, I wouldn't even know where to start to start
Right.
trying to hit all of our hotels and schools and hospitals and trying to get that message out. We can be somewhat proactive with some great literature and education, and Matt was already on the way of developing a great letter for his area. But I really do think we need to find some solution for this bucket of calls that are going to default route that work today.
This is Joe.
Yeah, and I think it's how they're default routing today, because I believe they are still default routing. It's just that we're able to mask that in the legacy environment more.
The way I
Matt.
understand it, for the legacy environment is, I wouldn't even call it a mask. I would call it a last ditch routing effort for default routing. I think the simplest way to say it is, if the call comes into the legacy selective router on a trunk and it fails alley, right? So it's in essence an NRF. The legacy selective router is able to determine the community the call came from based on the incoming trunk. And so it would then try to default route to the PSAP of that community by detecting the community of the incoming trunk, if you will. And with the IP selective routers, that feature just can't exist because we're not on camera trunk technology anymore. We're on SIP technology with selective routers that are located around the country instead of being regionalized in Colorado, if that makes sense.
No, Matt, and that does make sense, and I agree with you in that environment. And I can see that, like I said, in that IP world and selective routing. But some of these things are not default routing. It's not the end result routing. I would contest them, and we maintain some of the alley functionality even locally. For our city PBX, we have a vendor that's going and registering that information. But part of that is based off of that trunk ID when it's set up, that DID set up, and the PRI portion of it. It's setting and allowing for that default route, as you will, but um, it's not necessarily, and I guess it's just that technology change. Um, I'm trying to work through and trying to figure out how we can make that function happen, because I guess that's my concern is if we had this many default routing in this environment, and now we're relying on it to, the technology doesn't allow it, you know, that's a huge community that's being lost in that process, which would have been that concern or that conversation we probably should have had when we kicked off this project, knowing that was that potential. Um, I just,
So,
I would contend some of these aren't necessarily last call routing. It is based off of some of that PBX functionality, like in our PBX here at the city.
mhm,
We have the capability, we don't have a PS Alley function, but I have the capability of turning on, what was pre-PS Alley, which was that extension function. I would turn on, this is calling, and here's the extension it's calling from, and then I could go in and register that LA information for that extension to say second floor or whatever else, and we
mhm.
were routing based off of that record input. And so I guess there's a hybrid in there, and I get what you're saying on the routing, but anyway.
So do you have your DIDs all in the PS Alley database then? You're purchasing PS Alley service and you have all of your DIDs loaded into the PS Alley database?
Yes, in that environment itself for our city stuff, the majority of those are. Now, what's not registered is every extension. So we're
Right.
routing for the most part off of that environment. What our PBX technician has not done is done every extension. Now, there are a handful that are done, but like I said, I think there's a hybrid in there, and I agree with what you're saying on the last ditch and the routing. I think that is the case and happening, but I don't think that it's truly the case for all of these.
Right. So Jeremy, I think it's very similar to what Matt was describing. But in talking to complex translations, I think there's also a step where, based on that incoming trunk and NPA NXX, we can recognize and see the no record found and assign a DID to it, because we know in that legacy selective router it's part of this group, and that might be what you're seeing in that case, where we're able to say, oh, I know this is from Grand Junction City. I'm going to send it to Grand Junction, and I'm going to assign this default DID to it, which is going to potentially pull that alley information on that default number. You know what I mean? But it's essentially the same as what Matt is talking through, but we have some kind of info based on, again, that trunk group and the NPA NXX coming from, when we say, oh, I know this number, I'm going to assign this DID.
And I can agree and with that portion of it, but it brings up, and Cindy, we had sent out kind of two tests in that, and one of those was a test that came back with a no record found. And so I guess there's some concern in that portion of it, and not to get too technical, but that call is based off a business here that utilizes a third-party vendor for network and phone support here locally.
Mm-hmm.
It's a network company here that maintains that business. That company utilizes a third-party vendor for VoIP solution or for call solution out of Durango, Colorado, which is that point of entry. That point of entry then is using S7 circuits dedicated to routing to CenturyLink, and they're dedicating it based off of those communities to get that routing in. And talking with that vendor, they're not using any kind of PS Alley functionality. It's literally dedicated on that hard routing. And in talking with them, they were not even clear on the ESInet environment and the changes that they were going to need to make. So I think there's an education process that we're kind of held to, that we need to get out to these communities, because even in that simple environment, we got them to update the alley information. They make the call now. We've tested it, comes in correctly. We get the alley call, but it's based off of that S7 routing. And so,
Yeah. It doesn't have to be PS Alley necessarily, although we here strongly recommend it for large, complicated buildings or geographically diverse campuses. But there are a couple of other options that work okay if you have a single address site, so that you have the dialing number, the ANI, and an appropriate physical address loaded into the Alley database. And so you're not dependent on purchasing PS Alley service, but the key is that DN, the ANI, has to be in the Alley database with the correct physical address.
yeah, correct.
So it looks like we've got some work to do on this one. And I think the first piece of it is taking a look at the default routing. So Cindy has a proposal of what PSAPs would be the default routing PSAPs based on those selective router locations. And so we're going to be getting that out to everybody so you could take a look at it. And again, this would be in your current environment, it default routes. In the new environment, it would default route to Aurora. And we want to make that change to get some of these at least more to a geographic closer PSAP than sending them all to Aurora. So that's one of the call to actions for this first issue. The second layered issue that we're talking about in detail with Grand Junction, I'm not hearing, Cindy, what else we could possibly do, or do you feel like you have an open item or anything else you need from us that we can consider outside of continuing education, working with these PBX systems and trying to get the notice out that they dive deep into their PBX solutions to possibly start correcting some of the issues? Or is there something else you can look at?
I don't know yet. I am still investigating with complex translations, going through the logs of the test calls we made on Monday, as well as the ones that you guys provided, looking to see if there's any additional changes we can make from our side or working with Intrado that can affect the behavior.
Okay.
At this point, I don't think there is without some developmental changes to the solution. But I haven't given up on that yet. We're still, like I said, she made a couple of changes in the selective router for the test calls we made on Monday. And then we're going through the Wiresharks and SS7 traps to see on those calls if that affected anything.
Okay, so the second part of this issue, we're going to keep it open under investigation. I know you're diving into Wiresharks. Jeremy's offered to do additional testing, so whatever you need to get more data, please reach out. So we'll keep that part going as an open issue being investigated, which is great. And then the third piece of this is our education and awareness. So Matt, we're going to hijack your letter because you are a great writer, as we all know, and we're going to take advantage of your abilities. And Matt produced a letter, just an educational letter about this issue for his area. And we're going to do a draft template, and we'll provide that over to the ESInet users so you can take a look at that. And if you want to start doing some proactive outreach, send a letter out to various businesses just so they can maybe test, take a look at their PBX, etc. So I really look at this as a 3 kind of bucket approach. Does anybody have any concerns or gaps that I'm not identifying in this issue?
Joe Benkert here. I have a question.
Go ahead, Joe.
Does this intersect at all with the Carey's Law requirements that PBX users or operators configure their systems in certain ways to get more or better information to a PSAP?
Joe, it absolutely does intersect, but Carey's Law and Section 506 of the Ray Baums Act only apply to new phone systems, not existing systems. The existing systems are all entirely exempted. However, we choose to encourage everyone to adhere to those new regulations per the new law.
Okay. And I seem to recall a meeting down in Pueblo where a gentleman from some company who was a real advocate for Carey's law was saying that all modern PBXs and call systems that people would be using have the capability of being configured. I don't know if that just had to do with direct dialing of 911 or if that also would have addressed these other problems. But that could be important.
Well, there's a few key issues under Carey's Act. Ray Baum's Act requires that the MLTS provide a dispatchable location, which is essentially alley data, right, or PS alley data. And most systems for a long time have had the ability to work with PS alley service or something like that. Not everyone has those today. I know we've been working with our school district, city, county, hospital, et cetera, for probably 12 years, trying to encourage them to budget for these kinds of systems. And over time, they eventually did, but then, of course, they don't all do a great job of maintaining their PSLA records, so that's an ongoing issue, but it's really their responsibility. But just to circle back, the Carey's Law and Ray Baum's Act really only applies to brand new systems.
Okay.
Legally speaking, anyway. The FCC has a fairly succinct web page that speaks to MLTS requirements under both of those laws and the related regulations. Let me see if I can put a link to that in the chat.
Great, thanks, Matt. Anybody have any piece else that they want to discuss on this? I know we've got several other items to talk through today, so but this is a very important issue.
Kimberly, this is Mandy, just real quick. The question came up by Jennifer Kirkland last week, and I haven't heard the answer, but you know, Colorado's not the first to migrate to this sort of system, so I'd like to hear from Lumen. Have you encountered these issues in other states, and what was the resolution? Why is it so unique here in Colorado?
Yeah, so I did ask that question of Cindy, and they have encountered the issues, and it's not unique to Colorado, but Cindy, go ahead and.
So I asked that same question a couple months ago when we ran into it with Rocky Mountain. Yes, this has happened in other places, and the answer has been essentially the same. It is the PBX MLTS operator's responsibility to make sure that they are sending the number they have database for 911 on those 911 calls. So if they're not a PS Alley customer, they have one main number that's databased for 911 routing, and that is the number that has to be sent as the TN for all 911 calls coming from their system. And then, of course, if they're a PS Alley customer, they can send those direct extensions, but it's up to them to maintain those records and have those numbers provisioned whenever they add a new one or move the phone. So I know that came up in South Dakota, and that was the information given to them. And in Minnesota, Minnesota has for years pushed PS Alley. So I think they have more adoption of that PS Alley type service. So it was less of an issue from them. And in South Dakota, I think it's a different population. There's not as many large cities that are going to run into this issue with businesses and corporations as much as we are here in Colorado.
And so, Cindy, I guess just from my perspective, I want to just point out that both of those examples that you cited migrated before Colorado. And I think a real opportunity was lost by taking experiences or possible risks that you have found in those projects. And when I say you, I don't mean you personally. I know that there's other project teams working on these. So we could have started educating and been aware of this before we found it. So I just really want to stress how concerning that is on something that could impact our ability to talk to somebody who needs 911 now, and they're being default routed over to Aurora with no record found. So it's a huge concern, and I hope that one takeaway Lumen can have with this is to identify this as an issue in a migration, and that future deployments, the conversation happens early on. And just from everyone's perspective, we've been having conversations, this best practice or issue, it may be a good audience that we share with NASNA, with Nina, APCO, just so other people can start talking about it and start that education process.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I am going to add it into our PSAP implementation guides and project documents. And I've certainly shared it with my whole team at Lumen to bring better awareness and visibility into it. So if someone else is starting an ESInet project somewhere else, they're aware and can have this conversation earlier in the process.
Okay. All right. So if you have additional comments, questions, thoughts about MLTS, don't hesitate to email me, email Daryl, email Bruce, and then we can just continue the conversation. But let's go ahead and move on to the next issue, and that's Vail PD. Yes?
I put that link in the chat just so everyone knows to look for it.
Thanks, Matt. So Vail's having issues being, I think it meant to say being able to answer certain lines. It's typed as unable.
Yeah,
okay, so can you just explain what's going on at Vail?
So it seems to be on some wireless lines in particular that sometimes they can't pick up the call when it rings. It's been a little bit inconsistent, but it seems to be lines that were previously, they had wireline and wireless trunks dedicated in their system. So at least one of those wireless trunks, they'll get a 911 call on it occasionally and be unable to answer it.
Okay, and this issue has been since September 29th and it's not resolved?
I don't know if they are still experiencing it. I don't have a clear resolution on it, so I wanted to keep track of it. It is being worked with Roy Mann and Bart Burke and Vail, along with the transfer issues that they've had some issues being able to transfer calls to admin lines as well. And worth noting, they're on a very similar platform to Summit. They're both on Patriot systems.
And they're either they're maintained by Lumen or self-maintained, correct?
Yes, Summit is self-maintained and Vail is maintained by Lumen.
So you've got kind of end-to-end here. Is anybody with Vail on today to talk about this inability to answer 911 calls?
Hi, Kimberly, it's Mark. And we had one of these yesterday morning, so it's not resolved.
Okay.
So Mark, did you report date, time that occurred or any other call details?
I've been reporting those as they come in. It doesn't happen very often. It's odd. And then it bounces to Pitkin County, which is our backup, and then they can't pick it up either.
So it's a call that can't get answered even at the backup. So it's a 911 call that cannot get answered.
Yep.
But it's not consistent. It's been really random and odd.
That's correct.
Well, yeah, I would put it as extreme, not just high. That's a significant issue. So Cindy, can you please keep us updated on this now that you've got a new case that just happened yesterday?
Yep, and I just wrote that down. So Mark, you provided that to the NOC, or did you give that directly to Roy?
I sent it to Roy and Bart.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, and the next issue, Vail call transfer issues, it's what, Summit is experiencing. So very similar issues and same type of thing. We're waiting for the information back from Motorola, and then we're going to do a vendor meet with Vail and Summit together.
Come up with excuses.
I have Kimberly. This is Jerry from Summit. I have
Mhm.
a quick up.
Oh, Jerry, you're muted. If you can, I heard you for a moment and then it went mute.
Oh, I think yeah. Okay, yeah. I think you muted everybody. So
Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. So yesterday we contacted Motorola. We were working with them, and I'm just gonna pitch in. So because I told Mark I was gonna update him. So sorry to hijack the Vail issue, but we're experiencing the same issue. We tested 3 different settings on the CPE with no success. Yesterday at around 11 a.m., we responded back to Motorola. And then this morning we asked Motorola again, and actually Jeff Tucker reached out this morning as well to see if we can follow up. But as of right now, we tried to change some settings on the system and it didn't work. So I just wanted to give you that update. Thanks.
Thanks for the update. And again, these are critical issues that have been in the system for several months. So Cindy, I guess I'm just kind of looking at what can we do. And Jeff, Motorola, we're going to be leaning on you. We've got to get this resolved.
So for Vail, I'll say that I don't think this is the same issue. Our transfer issues are very random. So when we're taking a 911 call and trying to get Voyance or our admin line, we end up going to just random places. Even places that are like internet sales sites that it's just really odd. Sometimes we get personal voicemail for people. So I think Jerry's issue in Summit County is more when they transfer, it's going to a certain place. Is that correct, Jerry?
No. So in the beginning, so here's part of the I guess the testing that we've done. We've changed or we've been testing to different locations by using different formats of 10-digit. So in our system we have some of the testing numbers that we do when we do testing and when we change settings. We have 10 digits without dashes, 10 digits with dashes, and within Patriot you put exclamation marks as a delimiter, and we've tried that as well. So we've experienced some of those issues, but those are very, very seldom. At the beginning, when we first moved, we would try to do a transfer and we end up in some random place. But I'm not sure which one of the settings that we changed kind of helped us with that issue. Now, the issue that we have right now is we transfer over to the number that we want. We reach the party that we want. However, the call taker cannot get off of the call. So if somebody calls 911, we transfer them to ski patrol, we can't hang up the call. So we're in a situation where we're just kind of stuck. Like we can't hang up the call until, for example, ski patrol and the third party caller hangs up the call. So that's one of the issues. The other issue is, and you have it described correctly up there, is when we try to transfer to CSP using a star code, a 3-digit star code, sometimes we end up in error, and I feel like that one is a Lumen thing. That's not really a CPE issue, I think, because sometimes we end up in CSP, sometimes we don't. But anyway, that hopefully that helps with the issues you're having, Mark.
Yeah, I think all of these descriptions and details, it just requires a vendor meet. It requires a lot of hands taking a look at this and just getting it resolved, because some of it sounds to me PBX conferencing, being able to release a party and keep that call pinned up. But yeah, a lot of concerning information here. So Cindy, are you going to be point on this, or is that going to be Rory? Who should I be following up with on these Summit and Vail issues? And Cindy, I'm not hearing you if you're talking.
Sorry, I muted myself. I'll take point and make sure we're coordinated and getting these issues resolved.
Okay. I'm going to be bugging you every couple days.
Okay.
All right, Arapahoe County, you have listed here a Viper upgrade project, and I'm not quite sure how the impact on the ESInet with this, since they've already upgraded and migrated, I mean.
They, as part of the Viper upgrade, there is conversation about re-IPing and getting new URIs. So we've had a request in with Entrado to quote that project to do the new URIs. That would essentially mean redeploying them on the ESInet. Entrado came back with some suggestions about creating just a test URI to allow them to test the new system, but leave everything the same. So I'm waiting on a follow-up call with Arapahoe County and C1 to talk through that. But if we go forward with assigning new URIs and new IPs, we would just have to carve out time to essentially redeploy those PSAPs.
Okay, that makes sense. I see that Bruce is on. Bruce, do you have anything about your project or any concerns? He may have had to drop. Cindy, do you have a time frame?
He originally wanted it by the end of the year, but I believe it's been pushed out to Q1 at this point.
Okay.
But either way, we owe Bruce some answers and some numbers. So I want to get that to him.
Okay, great. This next issue is for everybody. So another kind of big issue here that we need some response from all of you on. And if you are getting ready to migrate, this will be handled now. If you've migrated, you do have an action item. So Cindy, do you want to walk through what this issue is?
Yeah, so there is a timer in the ESInet. It's a ring no answer timer, which basically says if we deliver a call to you and it rings for so many seconds, after so many seconds, we're going to assume that there's no one there, there's something going on, and we're going to advance the call to your alternate route. Associated with that timer is also a flag that takes that route we were sending the call on out of service, which takes basically abandons your site until someone calls in. Either you call us or we call you to manually put your site back into service. The ring no answer timer is configured in seconds, and it essentially is twice whatever. If you tell me to provision 60 seconds, you essentially get 120, because it's going to try 60 seconds on the Longmont route, 60 seconds on the Miami router. It's going to try side A, and then it's going to try side B. And then it's going to advance to your abandonment route. And once that event happens, it's a yes-no flag. Do you want us to take that route that we were just delivering that call on out of service? Yes or no? Right now, everybody was defaulted to yes. And we saw that in Weld County over Halloween when they had some big events happen right around midnight. Took their site out of service and essentially abandoned their site until someone could call in and have those routes put back in. Generally, I do not believe that. So that was originally configured with the idea that if you have to abandon your site in a hurry and forget to flip the make busy switch on your way out the door, this would automatically, after a couple of calls don't get answered, take your site out of service so that calls just go to your abandonment route automatically. I believe that's less likely to occur than the situation we saw at Wells County, where they just had too many calls hit all at once because of a major incident, and they couldn't get them all answered quickly enough, and they routed to their failover route. I think we should set that flag to no for almost everybody, because you are there, you are taking calls, and you do want the next one to try you before it goes to your alternate route. But it is a flag option, and we want to, since we've already configured everyone that's deployed to, yes, take your route out of service, we want to gather that information from you and find out, what do you want these timers set to, and what do you want that flag set to?
So for everybody, Cindy has prepared a survey. It's going to go out to you, and you need to answer it with what you want: yes, no, and timer thresholds. So be on the lookout for that. It's something that they're going to need to get your response and then place an order with Intrado to make the change. So we want to get this done soon, because there is a risk. Obviously, Weld County got to experience that, and that wasn't a pleasant process for them. So we would like to get this done as soon as possible. Cindy, I did respond back to your survey. Do you think that's something you're going to be able to get out today, tomorrow? When should we be on the lookout for it?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make that change you suggested to the one question, and then I can start sending it out today, probably today and tomorrow, as I gather everybody's contacts and get it to the right folks.
Okay, great.
Kimberly, this is Mike with Weld County.
Yes, Mike.
Just a clarification in regards to this issue. It wasn't actually a large-scale event. It was actually routine traffic that occurs daily here in Weld County, especially when you involve multiple interstates and the population up here. This really wasn't due to a large-scale incident, but it was actual routine daily activities that were occurring in Weld County. So I just want to make sure people don't understand or walk away that, hey, this is only a large-scale incident. It's not. It was affecting just routine daily activities that go on in many of our areas.
Yeah, maybe the better description would just be a sudden influx of calls, like you'd see with a traffic accident or shooting, right. Where just you have a sudden large bunch of calls hit at once.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Mike, for that clarity. So if you have questions, again, be on the lookout for your email for that survey to come out today or tomorrow, and then make sure you reply to it so we can get this changed if you are wanting a change. And again, Lumen recommends everybody change it, and I would agree with that recommendation. The next item, yes.
Really, real quick, what is, I think the default you said was 60 seconds?
Well, right now it's 120, which effectively gets you 240, so 4 minutes before it alternate routes.
And how was that? And how was that time?
I would recommend changing to at least 60 seconds and no on the flag.
Okay. I was just curious, like, why was 120 selected? Was there a reasoning behind that?
That was just a default recommended configuration. I believe it goes along with the fact that we're taking the trunks out of service, so we wanted that timer set higher because the trunks were being taken out of service. When we're not taking the trunks out of service, and it is really just a we have too many calls at this one moment to answer this one. I think we'd want that timer set a bit lower, but we also have to consider, and you'll see this on the survey, if your CPE is configured to auto answer calls, or if you have anything in your CPE that automatically forwards calls within your network after a certain number of rings. So you would see this maybe in Arapahoe County or in Larimer County, where they might have some automatic, ring for 4 seconds and then route to Fort Collins because Larimer County Sheriff is busier or something along that line. They might have pre-programmed into their CPE. So we need to consider all those settings so that we're not conflicting with them. So we ask about those settings as well.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. All right, everyone, I know we're over our hour, but we do have some additional items we want to talk through. So if you could hang tight, that would be great. Hopefully we'll be able to wrap up by 11:30. But again, a lot of critical pieces we want to make sure that people are informed on. So if you do have to drop off, Daryl is recording and it'll be saved up in the folder. So you could always come back and listen to the call. And Cindy, are you okay continuing on? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So again, I apologize everyone for going long today. So the next one is unable to migrate Alley at Pueblo County.
Mm-hmm. I know C1 replaced the Pearl device out there, and Intrado and Lumen replaced the PAD device as well. We are actually scheduled to test Alley at Pueblo County this afternoon at 2 o'clock. So we'll be attempting. I think they had the pinout backwards when we tried it last time, as well as we were only one-sided on Alley, so we didn't want to. We wanted to troubleshoot that before we came back and worked on the migration part.
Okay. All right. Any questions from Pueblo County?
This is Shauna, but I don't have any questions. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. And then the last one on this issue tracker is the EXFO probe replacement project.
Yes. I don't have a bunch of details. I just wanted to bring awareness to this. I've got an internal meeting next week to get more details on this. But we have a new monitoring probe that we're using on ESInet networks now. And they do want to replace the probes that have been installed at all the PSAPs that are deployed to date with these new models. So I will be working on a project to plan that.
Okay, and from a timeline perspective, is that something we're going to start seeing this month, or is that something that you believe will get started? Okay. Yeah. All right, great. So just on our radar. Thank you.
Yes. PSAPs that have not deployed yet will get installed with these new models. I believe Baca, Pueblo PD, the ones that shipped out yesterday and today are the new models.
Okay, great. All right, and those are all the issues that CenturyLink is tracking. We do have some additional issues on the discussion spreadsheet, which we're going to go to now. So I'm going to wait until we get through that before anybody chimes in about, hey, you're not tracking my issue. So that will close out our project update and the open items and the issues tracking. So what we're going to do is just jump into the discussion items spreadsheet. Daryl, if you don't mind displaying that, or I can share my screen if it's easier.
I'm getting it.
Okay, great, thanks. And so while he's pulling it up, and I'm just going to kind of scroll through this piece, see if that filter works for you. It should be the working filter in on the top bar there. Actually, it's over by this. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. So we've already talked about default routing. That's the first item. We always discussed coming back to visit it, but not because of MLTS, but we do have that default routing piece that we're tracking. The next item that we're tracking, Cindy, has to do with the PAD, remote PAD devices. Do you have an update on that for Boulder, CU, Arapahoe County SO?
Yeah, so the circuit orders were ordered for all of these. I'm working with Ken to get the pads ordered. So we should be moving forward and have this wrapped up in January with the pads installed at the two Boulder sites and Arapahoe County.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions on that issue? Okay. The next one is the MLTS piece. So obviously we've got a couple of spreadsheets here, so we'll work on consolidating this over to the other spreadsheet. And then the ring no answer event we've already discussed, and then Summit County issue. And then the only other one that we have on this spreadsheet, Cindy, has to do with our concerns with the knock. And that had to do specifically with what Weld County experienced, not knowing why their 911 calls were being routed down to AdCom and not returning, the significant delays of reaching somebody at the CenturyLink knock. When we brought this up in November, you said that you were aware of the issue and you're taking steps to resolve that responsiveness. Do you have an update on this for us?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. The knock has added in this training additional staff to resolve that wait time. But in addition, there is a dashboard app, if you will, that is launching that will give everyone access online if they want to go through an online website rather than wait on the phone queue, to be able to open tickets and see status of currently open tickets or issues. And I can send you some more information on that dashboard, but everyone will have access to that in 2021, early 2021.
Okay, that would be great. So if you could send some more information on that, that would be helpful, and then we'll send it out to everybody or get it posted in our folder.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Anybody have any open item that you're experiencing? So you've migrated over and you're having an issue that we don't have documented or that we didn't discuss that you believe is tied to the ESInet project?
Yes, Kimberly, Mike with Weld County.
Yes, Mike.
I want to bring an issue up that we've been having here since November 10th on a consistent basis. We've been receiving, and I wanted to bring this up because I think it needs to be monitored by this group. We've been receiving PSAP disruption, service disruption notifications, probably 2 to 3, maybe even 4 a week. The majority of those, and I would just say 99% of those that we've been receiving has been coming due to a rollover, is what we're being told, or a misrouted call coming out of the Vail PSAP. It may relate to some of the Vail issues that are going on with transfers and their CPE up there. We've been told on several occasions by Lumen that this issue has been resolved and Trado has fixed the problem. However, I've got proof they haven't, because we continue to receive these. Probably received, let's see, right now I've got about 18 PSAP outage notifications since November 10th in regards to this specific issue involving Vail misroutes.
So, Mike, just so I understand, a Vail call misroutes, and then somehow you're getting notified that there's a PSAP outage issue?
Yeah. For some reason, it's misrouting to our PSAP. However, it never appears in our PSAP. And Lumen sends a notification that, hey, we've had an outage, and a single telephone call then is routed to Adams County because of our backup, but it's actually coming from a misroute in Vail, and it has some type, what they explained to me, and I can't remember the exact verbiage, some type of setting or something in Vail that they've got a wrong ID or something. They're coming to us, but it's being reported as a single telephone number service disruption outage notification. So, like I said, I've got about 18 of those since the 10th of November. I will tell you, I do recall prior, now granted, Weld County has been going through a Viper 7 upgrade since October 15th. This has really been, since that October, timeline that it became so prevalent. However, I do recall previously, probably on 3 separate occasions, of receiving the same type of notice disruptions for a single telephone number. However, we never got a resolution as to that it was, had to do with Vail or anything prior. And I'm talking like back in the May, June timeframe. So anyway, it's really become prevalent with our phone system upgrade that we've done here since the 15th.
So Cindy, would you like all 18 of those in your inbox so you can start looking at them, or do you want him to send them over to Roy?
Actually, our project manager with CenturyLink or Lumen has every one, and I know she's been working internally, and I think Cindy was actually brought in on one of the calls in regards to those. Is that correct, Cindy?
Yeah, Sandra Roybal has been looping me in because I asked to start being included on all of these issues. So, I've got all the details, and I've been tracking them. I can step in more and see if we can push a resolution here. I didn't realize they were occurring quite so frequently.
Yeah, they are, and we were actually notified. Lumen notified us that Entrado resolved the problem. However, we had more happen just the other night, and Entrado said, "Oh, we haven't done that yet."
Okay.
So I'll be honest with you, I have no idea if it's been done or not.
Well, I see Kim is on the call. Kim, I'll call you after this, and we can talk. Kim Haig, that is.
Okay. No, that's great.
We'll find out what's going on and get you a status update. But yeah, Sandra Roybal and Roy Mann have been working on it as well. And
I wanted to bring it up in this call, Kimberly, because I wanted to make sure that maybe some of these notifications that they're now receiving, that other PSAPs that's already converted, that they're not being overlooked, because I think I actually did that early on in the ESInet implementation, is kind of discounted it because it was maybe 1 or 2 that had occurred. And now it's become extremely prevalent since November, the first part of November, that I just want to make sure that, as others that have already cut, have you all experienced any type of those notifications now?
Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up, Mike. And I'm going to go back and double check to see if I've received anything, and I don't recall, but I could have overlooked it. So thanks for bringing that up here.
Yeah, and what's odd is that it's only in the actual notification that they send, it's only for one telephone number. So it's not an actual outage. It's not an outage like we're used to. When we would get these notifications, it's really one telephone number that didn't route to our PSAP for some reason that shouldn't have came here to begin with.
Right, and it's really interesting, Cindy. Some of the answer I'm hoping that you can provide us is, why would a number that's having an issue routing with Vail end up in Weld County? Was it trying to be delivered at Vail and it had to do with a transfer issue, or did it truly? It's just very layered, complex issue that's being generated by a service disruption notification. But there's so much more behind this that I have questions about. So I look forward to hearing what you guys find.
Okay. Yeah, I'll follow up with everyone.
All right. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate all the information. Does anybody have another issue that they're tracking that we need to discuss with the group? Okay, if you have issues, don't hesitate to add them to this spreadsheet. Please also, or instead of, either way is fine, email me and let me know. If you have been talking to Cindy about it and you didn't see it tracked today, we want to make sure that we have it documented, because an issue that could be happening in one area could also be happening somewhere else. We just want that kind of visibility as we're migrating these PSAPs. So please let us know. All right. We are going to move to the new business item number D, which is officer elections at the January meeting. So this ends my term as chair of the ESInet user group. So I just want to put a plug out there for anybody who is on this call or that you're thinking of that would be great at taking this position. It's actually really informative, and you learn a lot and you'll grow a lot and you'll tax your mental capacity by trying to dive into PBX and ESInet, and but it's a great experience. So if you're interested or thinking about it, please consider running for the chair position in January. So we'll have a couple more our weekly calls, probably just one more week because of the holiday, and then we'll have our January meeting. And Daryl, I'm not sure how officer elections are going to go. Is that something we'll do virtual like we do with the task force? We'll do ballots, or I don't recall
I
how that's going
believe,
to be handled.
yeah, we have actual charter, which is unusual for a task force committee, but we have an actual charter, or yeah, there it is. I believe it just says that the election is held at the meeting, so I believe it will be of the people who are present at the January meeting. But I'll double check that, and if there's a way we can do it through an electronic ballot, that might be easier. I'll get with you and Bruce on how to do that.
Okay. Sounds great. So if you're interested or even thinking about it, please, if you want to talk to me about it and ask questions like how much time do I spend a week on the ESInet user group, I'm happy to talk to you offline too. Even though we're getting close to the end of migration, that's just really the beginning of the work for the ESInet user group. We have a lot of exciting things that we need to be doing and looking at. So please consider taking a position. And again, just reach out to me if you have any questions about it.
Kimberly,
Yes, sir.
are you declining another term?
I would not want to rob anybody of that awesome experience.
So that's a yes.
No, I'm not going to say
Answer?
I'm not saying I'm declining, but I really do think that we've got so many great people in this state that it's a great opportunity. So I want you to think about it, and folks to think about it for January. And if you have questions, just let me know.
Right on.
Okay, so that's it for new business, and we'll move into open discussion. If there's any other concerns that PSAPs would like to bring up for Lumen, now would be the time. All right, the next item will be any open issue that Lumen has for us that we need our immediate attention that you haven't already brought forward.
No, I don't think we have anything.
Okay, sounds great. So now we're going to go to public comment. So if you are not a voting member and you've been monitoring and you've got some comments that you would like to share with us, the floor is open to you. Okay, so we still had the Clearview training session on the calendar, Cindy, so or on the agenda. We're going to get that off, but looking forward to an invite, some options so we can get that training. I know I've been kicking around in there, and I could use some training. So look forward to getting that session scheduled.
Yeah, and with that, I know a lot of people have dropped off, but is next week a good time if I can get on Kim's schedule for training, or is everyone kind of fading off into the holidays?
Yeah, well, Cindy, I think that this is critical enough. I like to schedule things with at least a 3-week to month notice, just so people can adjust their calendar, because even though we're going to record it, we want to be able to pull stats. And the reason this is really critical is eventually prepaid wireless distribution may come from Clearview reporting. And so we want to make sure people understand what's in there, maybe even get them some experience so they can pull stats, validate it against their CPE stats, etc. So I just think it's fundamentally important. Daryl, would you agree, since I know that's kind of tied to your prepaid algorithm stuff?
Yes, and just also the fact that I know there are a lot of PSAPs that have their own MIS, but there are some that don't, and this may be the first time they've really even been able to dive into call stats and see what their call volumes are for different times of the day and different days of the week, and I think it's important for them to be able to know how to use the tool.
Okay, so I'll look at early January then instead of next week.
That would be great. All right, so that concludes everything on our agenda then. So thank you for hanging tight, everybody who was on for the full hour and a half. A lot of great discussion. I appreciate everyone's expertise, comments, and Cindy, I know we just put a lot of pressure on you, but some of these issues just have to get resolved. So PSAPs have been patient way too long. So thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And if we don't talk before the holidays, have a great holiday break.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks.